I be vulnerable with you all? I wasn't sure if I should give the talk that you're about to hear. You see, I'm not the most visible or vocal social justice activist. In fact, I'm an introvert. But that's exactly why I knew I needed to. For all of those who are often not seen or heard, but who have the ability to be agents of social change. So hi, I'm Eleanor Thompson, the introverted social justice lawyer. My path to becoming a social justice lawyer began with an encounter with a child soldier on the streets of Freetown in 1998, a year after the military had taken over power in a coup. My mother and I were walking along Shaka Stevens Street, and I saw a boy dressed in a military uniform. He was carrying a large gun, and he had ammunition strapped around his chest. And being that type of kid that I was, I could not help but stare, even though my mother was nudging me not to. And as we walked by, he not only stared back at me, but he clenched that gun tighter, as if sending the unspoken message that the power to kill lay in his hands. After that, I wanted to become a lawyer. Not to wear a hot, stuffy wig and gown, and not for people to call me barista, legal, my lady, and all of those other terms that people like to give us. No, I wanted to become a lawyer because I saw the law as a means of addressing what was seemingly one of the worst social injustices imaginable, the destruction of our children's future. So when the local government, without even consulting my community, recently leased land where the community's only government school and recreation field are located in order for a church and health center to be built, people in my community were naturally concerned. It's not a wealthy community. And people seemingly didn't want to sacrifice their children's education, nor expose primary school children to health risks, nor jeopardize the community's social cohesion. That child soldier that I had encountered on the streets of Freetown over 2 decades before kept running through my mind. And so did my mother. You see, before there was a government primary school in the community, there was only a one-room schoolhouse that offered class 1 and class 2. My mother was raised by her grandparents in a very humble home, and she attended that school barefoot because she only had one pair of shoes, and those were reserved for church. And class 2 was as far as she was going to be able to go at that community school. But luckily, a prominent female educator and activist set up a school for girls in a neighboring community that offered classes at low tuition that her grandparents could afford. So my mother, on her first day at that new school, she walked into class as a proud head girl, and she looked around, and she was mortified to realize she was the only one not wearing shoes. When she got home, she told her grandmother she was not going back without shoes. Luckily, a relative came to her aid and helped her to get a pair of sandals that she could wear. But my mother was determined to use that opportunity that she had to educate herself. And she did. Eventually, she was able to obtain a government scholarship later on to further studies in England, and then later on in the United States. And she did that while working full-time for an international organization and raising children, ensuring that we had the opportunities that she didn't. So that brings me back to what was happening in my community. People's concern about the building project started giving way to resignation as their concerns fell on deaf ears, and we watched as construction continued. But isn't that what always happens in Sierra Leone, especially when injustices are happening around us? Like how in 2022, we still shout, "Lights don't come," when EDSA decides to grace us with electricity after almost a full day of blackouts. Or when the price of fuel increases by 100% in the course of months. Or the average worker has to use most or all of their monthly salary just to purchase a bag of rice. It's how we feel when our land is grabbed and when illegal logging continues indiscriminately, destroying our forests and our most precious natural resources. It's how we feel when police use excessive force and live ammunition against citizens exercising their right to peacefully protest. And it's the disgust and outrage we feel when we hear about a woman or a 5-year-old girl being sexually abused and murdered. What will shake us as citizens? Yes, even us introverts. What will shake us as citizens to demand even the minimum from our leaders and hold them accountable? Well, pursuing social justice requires 3 things: information, people, and innovation. Information is the foundation because information has power. It's what allows us to know our rights and responsibilities as citizens, make informed decisions, and what empowers us to act. No one in my community had information about the lease or the building project, but I knew that there is a law that gives citizens the right to get information from public authorities. Now armed with information, we were able to evaluate for ourselves what the lease and the building project would mean for us. And people were motivated to engage our leaders, and not only to express concerns, but also to express a vision for our community's development. Now that brings me to the second key ingredient for social change: mobilizing people. For an introvert like me, mobilizing people can feel draining or even daunting, but it doesn't have to be. Mobilizing people in my community was as simple as having one-on-one conversations. People felt like someone was actually listening to them, and that they had a voice, and that that voice mattered. So people were now energized. We set up a working committee, and various community stakeholders volunteered to take on different roles in what was now a collective effort. The third key to pursuing social justice is innovation. We have to innovate the way we do activism. The traditional marching in the street protest, when it's even permitted, as we've seen, can be a dangerous or even deadly endeavor for citizens. And agents of the state are often used to suppress citizen action. I'm sure it won't surprise you to hear that police were sent to stop us from holding a community meeting. Not even a street protest, a mere community meeting. Those who sent the police were scared about people discussing a public document and a project that was supposedly intended for our benefit. So expect obstacles, because frankly, if they're not trying to intimidate you, you haven't done anything yet. Innovating activism is about finding ways around the obstacles that those who benefit from the injustice are inevitably going to put in your way. In our case, innovation didn't mean having an online petition because of limited internet access in the community. Rather, people volunteered to take information to others, and through one-on-one conversations, people signed a petition that garnered over 500 signatures from just within the community in just 2 days. Now that got the attention of local government officials, and they agreed to engage with community stakeholders. So what moves you? What's happening around you that you think is unfair? What outrages you? Social justice activism isn't about who shouts the most. It's just about information, people, and innovation. Those 3 things are what has allowed me today to fight for the children in the same community where my mother got her start, so that they don't become like that child soldier that I had met so many years ago. And you don't have to be a lawyer to do this. Mrs. Jallo, a female landowner in Pujon, is at the forefront of ensuring that her community is not at the bad end of a land deal. In the process, she's breaking gender stereotypes that say that land business is not a woman's business. She's able to do this because community paralegals have provided information about her land rights. The community set up a landowners committee, and they decided to take an innovative approach to their activism by utilizing a reentry clause in a lease rather than taking a more radical approach of destroying the investor's plantation. Then there's Nene Touré, an anti-FGM campaigner. Nene and her colleagues collect data on FGM. They're mobilizing Sowais to understand the harms of cutting, and they're innovating activism by pushing for a bloodless Bondo cultural ceremony. We all have a light within us that can help fight the injustices in our society. Information switches on that light. People multiply and sustain that light, and innovation unleashes that light's power. So I challenge you to ask questions and seek information. Find your people, and also those who think differently from you, and connect with them. And innovate your activism, not just by throwing technology at a problem, but by finding ways to use your resources to get around the obstacles that are going to be put in your way. So don't be afraid of your inner light. Embrace that light and use its power to make the change you want to see in the world around you.